Welcome to this week's webinar. Today, we will be discussing sexting, what it is, what some consequences can be, and what we can do to help prevent it. Sexting is sending sexually explicit messages, photos, or video via cell phone, computer, or any digital device. Sexting includes photos and videos containing nudity or showing simulated sex acts. It also includes conversations that discuss or propose sex acts. A lot of times people think that sexting is specifically videos that are of individuals completely nude. This doesn't have to be the case. If it's sexually explicit, they could still be clothed, but the clothing might be wet, short, or provocative. Conversations that are talking about sex, pressuring people into sexual acts, or proposing sexual acts are also considered sexting. I want to talk about a few statistics before we move on. 80% of people who sext are under the age of 18. This is especially concerning when we talk about legal consequences, because any of these images would be considered child pornography. 70% of teens who sext say that they do so with their boyfriend or girlfriend. Some of the reasons that people say that they sext are because they think that it's expected in a relationship. They feel peer pressured to send a sex message to their partner. They may think it's funny or a joke, or that they think everyone else is doing it. 22% of teen females report having sent a sex message or image. Their counterparts, males, only 18% report having sent a sex message or image. However, when you ask young people what their perceived perception is and how many of their peers they think are sending these messages, the number is drastically higher, closer to 80%. Like most things, teens tend to think that their peers are doing things at a more increased rate than what they actually report doing themselves. 17% of people who sext share the messages they received with others. So you may think that you're in a trusting, committed relationship, and you may choose to send your boyfriend or girlfriend a sext message or image. 17% of those people who have received one then share it with someone else. Of the people who share, over half of them are sharing it with more than one person. This happens in a variety of ways. In some extreme situations, we have seen where somebody has received a sex message and then they proceed to forward it to the contacts in their phone, post images on social media platforms, or they could just be showing somebody that they're sitting next to, their own device, and sharing that and violating your privacy. What I also want to mention is that 2 out of 5 young people don't tell their parents what they do online. A lot of young people, when asked, say that they defer to the don't ask, don't tell policy. If their parents aren't asking, they're not telling. So I want to talk about some consequences of sexting for teens. Although these are listed as minor consequences, this is how they're ranked by teens themselves. All of these consequences range in a level of severity, but for minor consequences, teens list school as one of the most minor. Some things that may happen at school is that the teen may lose internet privileges, especially if they're producing images within the school, on school property, or using a school device. They may also face suspension and have notes in their personal files that can impact college admittance. The other thing that teens list as a minor consequence for sexting are their consequences that occur at home. Teens usually report that if they have been caught sexting, they tend to have loss of privileges, meaning their internet or phone may be taken away or restricted by their parents or guardians. They may also be what they call grounded, having other privileges taken away, like visiting with friends, having people over, or they may have their curfew restricted. The main thing that they say is that it really does hurt their relationship with their parents. Their parents no longer trust them. There's a wide variety of legal consequences that come along with sexting. Criminal charges can include the production of child pornography, even if the image was taken by the child themselves. There are laws that are put in place to protect people, even though they can violate them against themselves. Teens have a really hard time understanding how they can violate or commit a crime against themselves. I like to talk about the same thing with seatbelts. The law is that you are required to wear a seatbelt while riding in a motor vehicle. And if you choose not to follow that law, then you have a lot of consequences. Some of them being natural consequences, like injury or fatality. Others can include legal consequences, like being stopped and ticketed for failure to wear a seatbelt. It's the same thing with these production of child pornography images. Because these images in and of themselves are illegal, even if a child produces it of themselves, they are violating that law. Distribution of child pornography is when the child then distributes it, even if what they're distributing is a picture of themselves to someone who requested it. Endangering the welfare of a child, and human trafficking and exploitation. So some sobering reality for our teens. You can be charged with a felony for any of these crimes, and the felony carries a 2 to 5 years in jail sentence if convicted. Teens can also be forced to register as a sex offender. The sex offender registry follows them for a minimum of 10 years, and it includes all of their basic information. Anytime they move or go to a new school, try to get into college, that's going to be something that they would need to report. Felony charges also carry a lot of other consequences related to them. Like you can no longer vote, you're restricted for traveling outside of the country, and you're restricted from owning firearms in many cases. And even though I have the legal consequences listed first, I would argue that the social and emotional consequences can be even more traumatic for a young person. Some of those consequences include bullying, being ostracized by their peers, being labeled, feeling guilt, shame, and embarrassment once their peers find out that they have been sexting. They can have a lack of self-esteem and even depression and suicide. Some common things that teens have shared after their sexting incidents come out is that they often feel even more pressured to sext by subsequent partners and in subsequent relationships. Not only are they being pressured to do so because they've already done it once, but they may be being pressured to do it more extremely earlier on in the relationships or at an escalated rate. I just want you to be aware of some apps that teens commonly use. Things like Snapchat, Twitter, Telegram, TikTok, WhatsApp, and Instagram. All of these platforms allow for sharing of both messages as well as images. Snapchat's claim to fame was that images that are sent via Snap are protected and more private because they were only set to last about 15 seconds before being deleted. Because of that claim to fame, a lot of young people felt that it was a better way to send sexual-based images and content to one another. And we saw a drastic uptick. However, these images can still be traced. Remember, everything is going through the internet. So what should we do and how can we help? As parents or other adults in a young person's life, I would encourage you to have open and honest communication. Discuss internet safety, sexting, and your concerns for your child. You can also brainstorm ways to stay safe online. Having peers talk about ways to stay safe online with each other is a really excellent way to bring up some key points. And a lot of times, the teens will actually educate the adults on new apps and what's occurring on them. You can also have teens practice ways to handle peer pressure. Discuss what you would do if you received a text or a conversation from somebody pressuring you to send them an inappropriate image. Also, if you were to receive an image that you did not want, what would you do with that? Who would you tell, and how would you get assistance? You may also want to talk with your older teens who are starting to form intimate relationships about creating a relationship bill of rights. A relationship bill of rights is a really basic thing to get kids to think about what they expect from their partner and what their partner can expect from them. You can create 2 columns and just kind of brainstorm the different things that would be tolerable or intolerable. And again, what your partner can expect from you. Things like, I will be supportive, I will respect their decisions and boundaries. If you have any more questions about sexting or online safety for teens, my email address is sarah@cacfingerlakes.org.